All right, everybody, welcome back inside here to the Silver Media Studios. Ariya Massoudi, Bob Ferranti. This is Seminole Sidelines. We've got a great show planned here for you today. We wish we were coming to you under better circumstances. Florida State falls 19-17 on the road in Raleigh. A tough L for FSU, 2 in a row now as the schedule ramps up. 2 top 25 teams, and Noles have looked tough. They've battled. In the end, though, Bob, they have come up short. Last night was painful in all caps lock, capital P, and the rest of the letters, and so on and so forth. Drive down the field, close, but no cigar. The Noles fall by 2 points.
It felt like shades of 2012, where Florida State had a big lead there, only to have NC State come all the way back, take a 17-16 win. Again, Saturday night, it was 17-16. For a while, you felt like Florida State might come out with the win in that situation. I think what we're seeing is the Seminoles are making progress. They're in position to beat a top 15 team on the road in a tough environment. They're not getting in a great position in the first half. They're letting some plays slip away, some drops, some penalties. Of course, we're all going to discuss the final drive, the interception. Was it the right pass to the right receiver and all this and that? But there were points left there on the board where Florida State could have put this one away much, much earlier, especially with NC State having a backup quarterback on the field who was very one-dimensional, couldn't throw the ball. Florida State had chances. This would have been the first time in 6 years that the Seminoles had beaten a top 25 team on the road. Very, very close, very frustrating that they didn't pull it off, but it's just part of the growth with this program right now.
It is, and we're looking through images here right now in that first half. Florida State, it was a dream first half for the Noles, 17-3 against one of the best defenses in the country. Is certainly on your schedule, and you find a way to run the ball effectively. You found a way to make the pass plays that you needed to, and you had a big halftime lead. And in that second half, Bob, it just felt like NC State made some adjustments, and in the end, FSU's offense could never find its footing there in the final 30 minutes.
Couldn't find footing, couldn't find a first down. It just felt like you couldn't get any momentum, no real confidence being built on offense. I think the defense was trying to keep the Seminoles in the game. When you're making stop after stop, you've got a crazy punt where Alex Mastromanno goes beyond the line of scrimmage. We've never seen anything quite like it in college football, at least in my memory. But when it happens, it totally changed the momentum of things. Yet I think the defense came through with a good stop, limited NC State to a long field goal. Again, it felt like the defense was put in some really bad spots, but was coming through with enough plays to just keep Florida State in it. The Seminoles just couldn't get those plays, couldn't make the catches. The penalties added up still, and just in the end, again, falling short.
Yeah, Patrick Payton and Leonard Warner had some big plays you see on those images there, and Florida State had a chance. Again, close but no cigar, and Florida State falls 19-17. If you had told me going in that the Noles would have the lead and Devin Leary comes out of the game and they put in a backup Chambers who, I mean, they didn't even trust to throw the football. I mean, I think he only had one attempt the whole evening there at Carter Finley. I'd have felt pretty good, but you needed one drive. You needed one play, really, in that second half, and the offense just never found that for you. And in the end, Florida State's trying to pick up the pieces here. Bob, overall, how much does a loss like this hurt FSU going forward? How do you regroup from it?
It's a tough one. I mean, if you believe in the 24-hour rule and coaches and players try to say that, well, that's just it. By Sunday night, let it go. You're back out on the practice field. I think that's why Mike Norvell likes to be out practicing on Sunday nights, because you're moving forward in your attention. You're making corrections, moving on to Clemson. It's a big week ahead for a top 5 team. I think you can take no moral victory in this, in being this close, but you have to understand what your mistakes are. You have to understand how close you were, that it wasn't NC State that was truly the better team. Even though they're a top 15 team, Florida State had the opportunities, the drops. They were there to catch, to have touchdowns, to move the chains, to have first downs. The penalties, Dylan Gibbons, after a play is over, that sets you back. There are just too many moments where Florida State players, whether they're veterans or younger guys, are just not making the right composed, mature play. And we've seen them. Malik McClain has made that catch in practice. He has a drop in the end zone. We've seen Johnny Wilson make the catches. We've also seen him drop. We just need to see more consistency and more mature moments, especially on the road, top 15 team. If you want to beat those kind of teams, you have to be consistently good for 60 minutes.
Without a doubt. And you saw those 10 penalties for 100 yards and drops killed you, and just crucial moments where Florida State had the game won and they just found a way to lose. I think that's a fair assessment of it. We've got a loaded show planned for you here this evening, and we thank so many of you here on YouTube watching us live, and we'll have it again available on Apple Pod, Spotify for a replay. I do want to bring in two of our esteemed guests here for the evening. Mark Salva, you know him well. Kirk Carruthers, two former Noles, one offense, one defense, and guys that have played the game at a high level. First off, gentlemen, appreciate you guys joining us here.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us. All right, Bob.
Glad to be here.
All right, Mark, let's start with you on this. You played offensive line, you coached. That offense first half, it was getting going against one of the best defenses, as me and Bob just talked about, that FSU will face on its schedule. Certainly one of the more underrated defenses in the country that Dave Doran has been able to put out there, the 3-3-5 scheme. What did you see early on in that, especially that second quarter when FSU was able to run the ball to be able to get out to that lead?
Yeah, so from my point of view, NC State came off the bus blitzing, right? They came off the bus and they were bringing lots of heat, and they were playing man on the outside. And so I think what happened was, we had a couple of throws that were really close. We missed on a couple of those one-on-ones outside. Malik McLean's comes to mind in the end zone. I think Johnny Wilson made a play, and of course, later on, of course, we hit the touchdown to Micah Pittman. But even before that, there were some matchups that we tried to hit that were really there. We just didn't make the play. And I think that scared them out of the blitzing off the bus deal, right? So they started playing a little bit more zone. They weren't blitzing as much, and they were blitzing more effectively, especially in the second half. But in the second quarter, especially, they just backed off. And so they weren't bringing as much heat, and we were able to run the ball. We were able to execute our offense a little bit, and that's when we built the lead. What changed was in the second half, they started blitzing a little more strategically. So bringing big heat on first and second down, right? Getting us behind the chains on first down. Our first down, the key to the whole thing was our first down offense to me, all right? In the third quarter, fourth quarter, we're not on first down, we're getting behind the chains. We're, second and 13, second and 9, whatever. Our first down offense was terrible. And that got us behind the chains, and they would get us in the third and long, and then they're dropping 8. And we got Travis trying to jam balls in 14 yards downfield on guys facing him, right? Those windows can close really quick, and Drew's not being successful. So it was just a progression by NC State making adjustments. They came out with a certain game plan, saw that it was really dangerous, probably kind of saw how their offense was going against our defense, know it was going to be a tough day, got out of it, decided to kind of slow play it a little bit. We built the lead, and then they changed up and started blitzing strategically. That's kind of the way I saw it play out offensively.
Yeah, and Kirk, from your perspective, too, I think Mark kind of transitioned it well. Defensively, at linebacker, when you're getting downhill, the way that NC State wants to trigger its linebackers in that 3-3-5, was there anything you wanted to see Florida State maybe do a little bit differently offensively in that second half?
Well, so first to start off with, Bob, you're right. That 24-hour rule, that one's not going to apply to this game. This game had so much importance, and this one's going to sting for a little while. But as far as the defense goes, there's so many positive things from, just looking at last week. We couldn't get off the field on third down, and it just killed us last week. This week, you saw these guys come out, and, I had text with Coach Norvell this week. And, even though last week we should have really still won that game, it was unfortunate. There's about 1 of 3 plays that could have changed it for us, but I hate to say that because obviously we lost, and that's why you play them. So, but with that being said, Coach Norvell said he was excited to see how this team responded, and I totally agreed. And in the first half, it was incredible to see that team to really grow, respond, and you hate coming off a loss no matter what, but you want to see how the team responds. And this team, especially defensively, offensively too, but really responded in the first half. And I was excited to see that.
Yeah, Bob, and you talk about it too all the time with the way Florida State tries to approach football games. Last week was tough, right? Wake Forest, but that's a team who beat you with an experienced quarterback, made more mature plays. You live with that. Last week, Mark, you were on the show too, and we live with it, right? We said Wake made the plays in the fourth quarter. FSU's got to grow from it. This one was tough. This one felt like it was a game you gave away, almost like the victory was there and you handed away and got the L instead.
It was a weird game where I think we saw a lot of injuries and how that was affecting both teams. You had Robert Cooper out, you had Trayshawn Ward out. How does that impact your play calling when your best running back is out? Are you leaning a little bit more on Jordan Travis and then maybe to another extent Lawrence Toafili, Trey Benson? So you don't have Robert Cooper. And then Devin Leary's out for NC State, and you think, well, NC State's going to run it. But at times I did feel if there is one issue I have with the defense, I would have liked to have seen them play the run a lot better.
Yeah.
You can kind of expect with a backup quarterback in the game, you're going to see a pretty steady dose of that run. I felt like Florida State, again, when you lose a close game in this manner, you're going to look at the opportunities lost. There were opportunities there for, I think, Florida State to make some stops, to make some catches, to not be penalized. And that's where you're kind of left with this empty feeling. And yet, to Kirk's point, it's going to be really, really tough to get over that. And you just have to find a way to move on. And maybe because Clemson is next and it's not a Louisiana or a lesser team, Clemson's going to have your focus, and that's just where you have to quickly turn the page.
Well, also, I think the point was made last week that we're at a point in our program where we have to play winning football. The margins are very, very small, right? And winning football is no penalties, no turnovers, high degree of execution, no missed tackles, right? Making catches, no drop ball, and all those things that are winning football, which we did for 4 weeks. We did it excellently for 4 weeks. And yeah, I know the competition has ramped up a little bit, but catching a football that's thrown right at you should be the same whether they're a good team or a bad team, right? Not hitting a guy after the whistle doesn't matter if it's a good team or a bad team. These things are things that consistently good football teams do. And for some reason, we've skid back on this thing, and I don't understand the reason why we have. But until we clean that up, we're not putting ourselves in a position to win football games.
I have a question for both of you, Kirk and Mark. The theme the last couple of weeks has been that FSU been in the media a little bit with us and on our sites and on all the other sites. Is this team pressing? Like, are they not handling success well, so to speak? Because it seems like in those crunch moments, and they had been doing a good job earlier this season, but the last 2 weeks, they've been making timely mental mistakes that have really hurt them.
Yeah, and I think you're onto something there, Ariya. I mean, this is new to this team as far as winning and some of the success, and how they've been handling it has been a little suspect at times. But I think Coach Norvell and the staff, has this team in the right direction. They have this program going in the right direction. We can't give up on this staff or this program at this point. I really do feel we're headed in the right direction. We showed it. We played one hell of a first half of football on Saturday. And unfortunately, just some things, went the wrong way for us in the second half. And we can't forget, NC State's a good football game. They made some second half adjustments. They came out and we knew they weren't going to quit. And so, we had to face a tough team that, had a good halftime speech. And unfortunately, like we said, there was a few more plays. And like you said, Bob, who would have ever seen a punt like that where he could have run for another 25 yards and got us the first down? Unfortunately, he punts and he gives it to him, in the red zone there. Just plays like that. And then, of course, the drive there at the end, we had the opportunity to set it up. But once again, and I know this is, beating a dead horse, we have to do something about our kicking game. Obviously that was in the back of the staff's heads and trying to consider, what do we do? Set this up for a field goal, or do we try to ram this thing in? And so then the very last play, whether it be the route, the call, whatever it may be, there was an accumulation of things that happened in the second half. It wasn't just one call. It wasn't just one play. It wasn't just one drop. But to your point, Mark, there's no doubt about it. In order for us to be a championship football team, we have to start doing the things that we should and that are expected of us. The things like catching, throwing, blocking, tackling. These are the things that championship teams do, and we need to do it consistently.
Yeah, but I'll say this too, though. Okay, this was a perfect example of snatching defeat from the jaws of victory, and we're in position to win. We're definitely in position to win that game. And I think we missed a really good moment here. And actually, my wife brought this up, so I'll give her credit for this observation. But when Ryan made that kick, when Fitzgerald made the field goal, you saw the response from the team, right? Those guys were genuinely happy. Absolutely. To really for him to make that kick. And his extra points were right on point. The ones, they were right down the middle, made that kick. We're not talking about a huge field goal here. We're in position for him to kick. If he makes that kick, can you imagine the response around that kid and around the team feeling good about, because Mike Norvell all week, what did he say? Right? I believe in our kicker. I believe in our kicker. I mean, he hammered that home all week. He deflected all questions surrounding the kicking game. He said, I believe in Ryan. We're gonna have competition, but I believe in Ryan. And there was, if you really believe in Ryan, what? Because look, I defended Mike, and I still do. I don't like to second guess play calling, right? But when we ran that toss sweep against LSU, everybody was griping about that. I totally poo-pooed that. You can't go back after the result and talk about the play. But this is a little bit different because you're talking about a risk reward scenario here, right? What's the risk and what's the reward? You know, and so so again, I don't like to question play calling after I know the result, but I think in this particular scenario, it's a fair question, you know, because I think there's an opportunity.
I see your point, no doubt about it, Mark. But you know, if Pittman comes up, who is such a beast, and you know, who plays incredibly well, and you know, makes big plays at big times, you know, he goes up, makes that catch, runs that route. You know, Norvell's, you know, a great play caller. We win the game,
No,
and you know, we don't have to worry about kicking the field goal. But you know, I totally understand what you're saying, 100%.
Yeah, I think the risk was just at that point.
Yeah.
I think it was because he kicks the field goal and we make it. I would have felt better if he would have kicked it and missed it than the way we lost it. Honestly,
Absolutely.
Personally,
I agree with that.
This is a good conversation, guys, and I think we should stay on this topic. It was actually one of the notes that I put in and Pat put in as well. So let's expand on it a little bit more. So just to play devil's advocate for the sake of conversation, last week against Wake Forest, Ryan Fitzgerald he's having a meltdown, so to speak, as the season progresses, and it kind of reared its ugly head against the Deacons, almost to a point where I know Norvell said he was playing the analytics for the 2-point conversion, but I got to think part of it was also you've lost complete faith in your kicker at that point. And then you put him out there for the deep field goal towards the end that he misses horribly. This week you move in, Mark, you say it too, Norvell's backing his kicker, but I don't think anybody actually believes that in 1 week Ryan Fitzgerald just magically turned into Adam Vinatieri, right? And so you put him out there early in the game. He does hit the 47-yarder, big confidence boost. But as you're moving down the field there at the end, if you go for the kick and Ryan Fitzgerald misses it, that whole narrative comes right back to, I can't believe you would let that kid try and win the football game for you. I can't believe. So what is the right balance there between we're being aggressive and going for the touchdown, or we're going to let the kid kick it?
What down was it when we threw the interception? It was first down, right?
Against Wolfpack, I believe it was second and 8. Second and 8, right?
Yeah,
It was second down.
I believe second and 8.
I mean, you're on the 22-yard line.
22, yeah.
You have a couple downs there to get it closer. Number one,
right?
I just think throwing that pass in that route was. I just think the risk for the benefit was just too much.
Right.
Okay. I think there are other things you could have done if you want to try to get in zone. Fine, be aggressive. I'm not saying don't throw it. I'm not saying run it 3 times and kick it. What I am saying is to jack it down there. You know, when things are pressed already, and you know, the argument was, well, they were in the exact same coverage, they were in the exact same whatever. Hey, those guys are on scholarship too, right? They're gonna learn from their mistakes too. And you know, like I said, Ryan up to that point had a good game, right? Yeah. He made his field goal. He made his extra points cleanly. They weren't close. I mean, they were right down the pipe, you know. And so, you know, for I'm just saying, for me, I would have felt better if we would have, okay, be aggressive, but if we didn't get a 37-yard field goal, or a 39-yard field goal, he can make that. I mean, that's got to be made. And if he can't make it, then we got bigger problems. And I wouldn't be near as whatever with Mike. I mean, I wouldn't. You have to play. Sometimes you have to play the percentages, right? He's very aggressive. Mike is a very aggressive play caller. He makes very aggressive decisions. And look, I'm fully aware that in this level of football, he's going to have to grow some too, and we got to grow with him. And I'm perfectly willing to do that with him. I really am. I like everything he's done up to this point. And I'm 100% behind everybody on this. You know, it's just an opportunity to learn, an opportunity for us to, you know, to quote Mike, to respond, right? And let me tell you something. Looking at him in his face during that press conference, he knows. I think he knows. He risks making that call.
Well, Ari, you made an excellent point. I mean, this is going to be obviously debated all week. do you let the kid kick and then he misses? And then, why did we do that? And then, of course, we throw the corner route and it ends up getting intercepted. And, oh, boy, why did we do that? And Mark, I definitely understand what you're saying. Not necessarily be conservative and, run 3 up the middle and let's kick, but possibly some different play calling. But once again, do we second guess these play calls? It's tough. They're doing their best job. We've got Pittman, who, like we said, he's a monster. The kid comes up with these kind of catches. If he makes it, everybody's happy and we're coming off into the sunset. But unfortunately, play calling maybe could have been different, but once again, it couldn't have. If it had been a touchdown, we'd have all been happy. So I understand what you're saying, Mark, but I think, Ari, like you said, you brought up a point that's going to be discussed quite a bit this week.
And the other thing is, too, I think some people say, well, why don't you throw it to Johnny Wilson down on the other side? I mean, hey, at that point, Johnny Wilson was 50-50 catching balls.
Yeah.
Right. He had a couple easy drops. He had a couple things going. So, that's not 100% either.
Sure.
No, without a doubt. And guys, I think just again, the good conversation there. And I think, for the record, Mark, I'm probably leaning on your side of this, and I would have probably just liked to see him kick a 35-yard field goal if you get a couple more yards. And, you had 38 seconds left too when the pick happened. So
he had 3 timeouts.
All 3 timeouts. And so I think I listened to some post-game interviews after, and the DB for NC State said they had actually run that play multiple times throughout the night. Mike actually caught a touchdown. The one-handed catch that he made that was really nice was on a similar concept, and the kid just played off coverage instead and read it differently the second time than he did the first time. And so, like you said, Mark, you got to give their kid some credit. They're on scholarship too. On our end, it's how could you do it? On NC State's end, it's that kid just made one of the plays of the season for NC State's team. And so, Bob, would you have rather seen the ball thrown to Wilson there on a 1v1? Because I was with some of my buddies and I'm yelling as the drive's occurring, we should take one shot to the end zone, but I wanted to beat a Wilson on a fade route, isolate him one-on-one with no safety help. Were you thinking the same thing?
I think what Mark's saying is good in that you are playing the high percentage pass if you do choose to throw there. You're going to put the ball only where Johnny Wilson can catch it, or it's going to go out of bounds. It's not going to be an interception. In that situation, the worst possible scenario is turning the ball over. It can't be allowed. I also think, not to dismiss this whole discussion because it's been a good one, but Florida State should not have been in this position to where it had to drive down the field to need a last moment score, field goal or touchdown. It should have been put away earlier. Yeah. There were opportunities late first quarter, early second quarter. Yeah, I mean, everybody was ecstatic, 17-3 at the half. Florida State's up. Wow, at NC State. But should have been 24-3. Could have been other opportunities in the second half where those drives stalled out. I think it did, yes, come down to the final moments. Shouldn't have. We will probably hyper-analyze what happened late. That's what we do. But I think we have to look at the full body of work. Every play from the start of the game means just as much as all the plays down the line into the fourth quarter.
Fellas, both of you on Zoom, just real quick, just for the sake of keeping the show moving too, on the Ryan Fitzgerald topic, 4th and 3, if you guys remember early in the game, FSU opts to go for it. And I think, was it Wilson ended up dropping the ball, or maybe the DB made a nice play from behind. That play call, did you guys like that, going for it on 4th and 3 early in the game, or would you have opted for a field goal at that point?
Mark, I think you start with this one.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have as big a problem with it early in the game, because you still have time to overcome an error, So no, I don't have a big problem with it.
Yeah, and I think at that point you realize that, obviously, once again, Mark, like you said about Coach Norvell saying, I have faith in my kicker, but at that point it kind of showed us maybe he didn't exactly have, too much faith in the kicker. So do we stay with that mindset and continue on with going for it? And then, like we said, down in the red zone. But I agree with you guys at the end of the game. I would have loved to us, be set up to have a chance to win, but unfortunately that didn't happen. But Bob, I think you really hit the nail on the head. There was things all the way through that game where we should have been in that position. We were a better team. We should have won outright.
Oh, they were primed for us to beat them.
Yeah,
they were primed for us to beat them. And Leary was, even before he got hurt, he wasn't playing well at all. I mean, I didn't feel like they were going to score on us.
Right, Mark? I agree. Oof.
I didn't. I mean, I was there thinking they're not going to score on us. And man, all we had to do is just a little bit of offense and we win that game.
Yeah, it's a shame.
You needed one drive in the second half. That's what hurts, right? You needed, a field goal would have been the difference, but one good drive anywhere in that second half, and it was over. And it was, Leary comes out of the game and they put Chambers in and they don't even trust him to throw a pass, really. They throw one pass that was low risk, pass to the corner of the end zone there, and everything else was bootleg runs and trying to misdirect FSU. And it's frustrating, fellas. Like it's like Mark put it very aptly. You snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. And I mean, it's brilliantly put. And guys, last thing I want to ask you about the offense too. Good to see Jordan Travis get his legs moving there in the first half a little bit and finally look like the dual threat quarterback that we'd seen in the past. He didn't play his best game, though, through the air. I think some of that, Mark, you mentioned losing first down and second down at times and getting into those third and longs really helped NC State be able to drop numbers. But what were y'all's thoughts on the way Travis played overall in this game?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Jordan Travis. I thought, he's a good dual threat quarterback. And, obviously that run that he had was huge for us. I think he's a really talented kid. I think he's maturing every week. He's getting better and he's improving every week. Unfortunately, he had a few bad plays that, definitely hurt us. But once again, there was bad plays all over the field. And unfortunately, those accumulated to a loss. But Ari, I think the kid's a stud. I think he's got a bright future, and I hope he comes back for another year.
Yeah, he was making some really good throws early for sure. I mean, he put some balls on there, and he didn't get a lot of help. And that was very disappointing to see some of the drops that we had. I think the first interception coming out of that time and rolling to his left. They were moving the pocket. They did some rollouts. They were doing some things to try to change his launch point, which is good. And I think every time except that time he was going to his right. That time he went to his left and tried to throw it really awkwardly into a really, really tight window. And it was just throw that ball away, I guess. But again, looking back hindsight, it was just why are we going to do that going to his left is something that I kind of questioned at the time. Not the best. I've seen him go to his left, but the way they were blitzing, the way they're coming, it was going to be hard for him to set his feet, turn his hips, and get his shoulders around and make that throw. But early on, he was definitely playing really good. I think towards the end there, we put him in tough spots, receivers drops, third and really longs, trying to run the ball on first down a lot. I think he did. I can't believe he got caught from behind on that 70-yard run. How many times has he broken like that? And so it tells me he's probably not 100% yet, because he breaks that run any other time previously to this year, he's gone. Nobody catches him from behind. So that tells me he's not. So yeah, he was fine. I don't think he got a lot of help yesterday.
But Bob, do you think, and someone texted me this last night, so I bring up the question. I think undeniably Jordan Travis has grown as a passer, as a pocket passer. Do you think at times Florida State's been too adamant to try and prove to the country that he's an elite pocket passer rather than mixing some designed runs in for him to be able to kind of be that dual threat?
I think Jordan is as much determined to be a passer as the coaching staff is determined to show he is a passer. I think this is what Jordan has wanted to do all season. This is his vision for how he is going to play potentially his final season at Florida State. Jordan is an improving passer, improving leader. I think he is a pick your spot runner, and he needs to be very selective in that regard, especially because he hasn't been a guy who slides. He has not been a guy who protects his body. He's going to go for it and get those extra yards. I want to see my quarterback slide and not take hits. There's been a history of Florida State quarterbacks, going back to Christian Ponder. You take a hit, you try to, lower your shoulder, and you get an injury. We do not want to see an injury to Jordan Travis right now. This team needs a guy like Jordan to be a passer, a leader, and a runner at times.
Yeah, tough first half there. Game for Florida State. Good first half, and then the second half, tough second half. Fellas, we're going to take a quick break. I think it's now a good time to kind of pay some bills. Alumni Hall has been very gracious in being a sponsor for us. So we're going to take a quick 30-second break. We'll be back talking more Noles and Pack after this.
Alumni Hall, where you'll find officially licensed FSU gear for the entire family, including brands like Nike and Champion, plus great gifts for your favorite Seminole and home decor too. Miss some of the old Seminole throwback logos? Check out our College Vault collection. Shop online at alumnihall.com and let our great customer sales team ship to you within days, or pick up in store in Tallahassee. You'll find us in the Miracle Plaza Shopping Center on Thomasville Road. Students and military get 10% off in store. Alumni Hall.
Again, thanks to Alumni Hall, a great sponsor of the Osceola We got Kirk Carruthers, Mark Salva, Bob Ferranti, Ariya Massoudi. Those of you watching on YouTube, we appreciate you. Keep those questions coming in. We're going to get to some questions later on the show. And we're also, of course, Seminole Sidelines will be available on Apple and Spotify later on this evening. I do want to bring in, I believe we have Pat Burnham joining us from, I think he just landed from Raleigh. Pat, can you hear us?
Yes, hold on 1 second. I'll be right with you. Can you hear me?
He's not off the plane yet, is what he's telling me.
No, I am off the plane.
He got a cocktail on the plane. No, there he is. Okay.
No
I think Pat needed
cocktails.
Pat needed some bourbon before he walked off that plane, and I don't blame him one bit if that's the case. Pat, thanks for joining us, man. Covering for us at the Osceola, you and Kurt Weiler. We had some great conversations early on with Kirk and with Mark, but your thoughts from the press box and some of the conversations you had after the game with, I know you talked to Mike Norvell with the press conference, and of course, Toafili and Bethune too.
Well, obviously those guys are disappointed, and they should be. I mean, the second half did not go the way they needed it to, particularly on offense. Listen, the defense played winning football. North Carolina State ran a little bit better in the second half. They did the first half, which played a factor in it. But at the end of the day, the defense did what it needed to win this ball game. Listen, we said all along would be the part of the schedule where we'd find out about this football team, right? We got through the first 4 games. Now I think the big question for everybody is this team the first half football team against NC State or the second half football team against Wake Forest or vice versa. But Mark and I have had these conversations before. It was feast or famine for this offense on Saturday night. Big plays, kept it in the ball game, or got the lead. Is that sustainable against good teams? You have to play some kind of complementary football, and by that I mean be able to sustain some drives and keep your defense off the field, which they did not do in the second half. I'm sure you guys have gone over the drive chart. One drive in the second half over 17 yards. That was the last drive. That drive just happened to have a 31-yard pass. A big play sparked that drive, but they could not sustain it. They've got to get that figured out on offense if they want to beat the teams that are equal to or better than they are.
Yeah. And Pat, I think this is a good time too to Mark and Kirk, some notes that Pat and I talked about last night and early into this morning. Is Florida State not running the ball enough? I think that's something that we've talked about. Great success in the first half. Staying committed to the run has been something Norvell's done in the past, but I think it ended, what was it, Pat? Like 30 rushes to 28 passes, or 30 passes to 28 rushes, I believe was the number. So for the fellas who joined us on Zoom, would you like to see this team commit to running the ball a little bit more?
I mean, you got go ahead, Mark. Go ahead.
No,
I was just going to say, you got 3 super talented kids at running back. I think we should try to utilize them as much as possible, of course. But then again, we have some really talented wide receivers too. We got a great quarterback. It's kind of how do you spread it all around to make everybody happy and to balance out the offense. But I think we should lean on the run just a little bit more. I think with the kids back there, we've got too much talent not to spread it out back there, for sure.
I think you got to remember, we're a zone read RPO team too. So some of these bubble screens, some of these slants you see might be called runs.
Yeah.
And so you can't always say, well, we're not running the ball enough. If the defense is dictating for you to pull the ball and throw it on these RPOs, then it goes down as a pass. I thought there was a point last night when I thought we were running the ball too much. We're trying, especially when, Pat, we were talking about how our first down offense in the second half is what got us in big trouble. We kept trying to run the ball majority of the time on first down, and we're just getting stoned because, again, they were being really strategic on how they were blitzing us and when they were blitzing us and getting us behind the chains. They kind of fell into a little rhythm, and we kind of let it happen too. And the thing is, we can be really creative in the running game, and for some reason last night we weren't very creative. We kind of ran out of the same sets, the same runs. I mean, against Louisville, we got really creative with the running game, and went to the 2 tights and with the 12 personnel and did some motioning and tying in wing stuff and trying to unbalance all that stuff. We jet sweeps, jet rockets sweeps. We didn't do any of that stuff. At LSU, we were really creative in the running game, but in the last couple of weeks, we've kind of fallen this trap where we're kind of doing the same kinds of things a little bit. And maybe that's because we're trying to do them really well, and maybe because we got some hurt guys and we got substitutes in there. I don't know what the reason is. Bottom line is, when we do run, we just need to be better at it.
Yeah, Mark, and I want to ask both you and Kirk this question. I know it was trips a lot of the time, at least for the strong side of the field, to the field side, and then they did some different things to the boundary as far as where the tight end was lined up or the H back. They came out, and as you've already stated, they lined up in that formation a lot. Is that because they did that, I mean, was it only a matter of time before NC State got a bead on that? What they could do out of that formation? Kirk, obviously you've played a lot of defense in your time. How does that benefit a defense when they see that formation over and over and over again?
Yeah, absolutely, Pat. I mean, once you're seeing something that's so repetitive, I mean, you really do get, a pretty good pulse on it. And I mean, you make adjustments, and that's what they did. And to Mark's point, with the talent we have, we do have to be more creative. I mean, we just can't go out there and expect, just because we do have some talent, to be able to run just these same, A, B, and C plays and expect big plays out of them. So there's no doubt, even though we do have the talent, we have to be more creative. But yeah, I didn't like to see that formation as much as I did last night, Pat.
Yeah, I mean, we were in a lot of tight end one side, trips on the other. They obviously saw something on film. They liked the way they lined up to it and their adjustments. They probably had a history going back however long with this guy that it probably gives them certain problems. If they did, I didn't see it. It wasn't materializing. At some point, you got to say, let's try something else.
Right.
But
yeah, and a lot of that too, guys, Pat,
know?
When you and I were talking last night, and it was one of the good points that you made, this team has been relying on explosive plays. Last year especially, the team really couldn't sustain drives. One of the things we were impressed with early on was Florida State was starting to put together 7-play, 8-play drives that churned some clock in addition to being able to have explosive plays. Last night against NC State, it felt like the Noles couldn't drive the field consistently, but were reliant on those explosive plays of 20 yards or more. Is that sustainable going forward for FSU against some of the better teams that they play?
I think you got to play. I mean, obviously it didn't work last night. I mean, like we said, 72% of the offense was found on 8 plays. 72% of the offensive yards were gained on 8 plays. I mean, that'll work against inferior opponents. And listen, even against better opponents, you got to find those, right? But you got to be able to play complement. I say it all the time. I know Mark probably gets tired of hearing talk about complimentary football, but with those big plays, you got to have something that's sustainable. And listen, it's hard to sustain things against NC State, but they did not sustain anything in the second half, and that's where the game got away from them. But listen. If they completed that pass or don't go for it on 4th and 3 in the first half and kick a field goal that's 30-something yards or whatever it was going to be and make that, we're having a different conversation. But yes, I think we all thought when Alex Atkins was named offensive coordinator there might be. Listen, Florida State had been good in Mike's first 2 years, manufacturing production in the run game, and this offensive line is better than those last 2 offensive lines. So I guess that's what surprises me. I know Mark said at points they ran the ball too much for his liking last night. But listen, the last 2 teams, Wake Forest and NC State, weren't just gangbusters running the ball, but they committed to it. And at the end of the game, they had 175 yards, as I believe both teams had right around 175 yards. One team had 40 carries. One team had almost 50. I would like to see with those backs that Kirk mentioned and that better offensive line that Florida State's had. And then with Jordan Travis being healthy, we saw what he could do with that 71-yard boot. I would like to see more run game. I mean, that's just me. Of course, I'm a former offensive lineman that likes that kind of football.
Yeah.
Guys, defensively, I think too, we briefly touched about it early on, but the Noles did enough to win this game on defense, especially in that first half. And once they got to the second half, Chambers comes in after the injury to Leary, and NC State had some really good field position, it felt like, for a lot of the night that, didn't require Chambers to have to move the ball much. But Kirk, Tatum, Bethune, that linebacking core, the front 7 seems to be playing at a much higher level right now, especially when they're healthy, which it seems like it's at no point this season. But as a former linebacker, how much fun has it been to watch FSU's linebacking play come and play at this level?
Yeah, linebackers have been getting a little bit of a bad reputation here for a while, and it is exciting, Ari. These guys are finally stepping up, and they're in the right scheme. I love this defensive scheme. that we've got going, and it's putting these guys in position to make plays. And we've got some great athletes. We've got some studs. Bethune, I love to see him maturing. I love to see him stepping up his game. But like you said, I mean, that whole front seven, there's a lot of stallions in that group, and they're exciting. I love the way that, we're being tenacious. Finally, we're going back to Florida State football and Florida State defensive football. So it's really, really good to see all of that happening and that evolution of that defense.
Mark, you saw Cooper goes down in that game. Florida State still finds a way to get pressure. I thought even on Leary when he was in. Patrick Payton was really good. Farmer flashed a little bit. Leonard Warner flashed at times. Even Verse, who's not 100%, still finding ways. Will they ever call holding, by the way, on Verse when he gets around? I mean, I don't understand. He might lead the country in sacks right now if he's allowed to play football the way that you want. And I know you guys are former offensive linemen. I get it. Whatever. Holding happens on every play. Save me this speech. But how much fun has it been, Mark, to watch this defensive front still continue to find ways to get pressure? Because that's a couple weeks in a row they've racked up 7 or 8 tackles for loss too.
Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised at the impact the defensive front seven and the defensive line had this game. I think a big difference between this week and last week were the linebackers. We talked about last week at Wake how that offense put the linebackers in conflict, and they were just kind of standing still. And that this game, man, they were on it. I mean, they were downhill. They were hitting gaps. They were making tackles. Guys were taking up blocks. I mean, it was. I was pleasantly surprised, especially in the first half, how impactful the front seven was and getting the pressure they were getting without having to blitz hardly much. So. Good game by those guys. Again, they did enough. They did enough for us to win the game, and it's got to be disheartening, but you win as a team, you lose as a team. There was a moment there, and I know that we're down with our depth, right? Guys are, Cooper has already been out, and we're down, Ray, I think was fighting an injury, and, the backup quarterback comes in and he obviously can't shot put it 20 yards. And they're not even going to try, and they're just jamming it down our throat, and we're out of gas. I mean, to me, I'm looking at that front four, and they were out of gas, and that was just so frustrating to watch them, run the ball during that time. It's just, but we're, again, we complimentary football, Pat. Offense did do enough to keep them off the field, and they were out of gas at the end of the game.
Yeah, 20 minutes. Florida State's defense was on the field in the second half. I mean, that's just. You can't expect them to sustain that. And NC State, despite the fact that it struggled on offense, is a physical football team. That offensive line comes off the ball pretty hard. I mean, they didn't run the ball like gangbusters, like 40 carries, 170 yards. But listen, they wore them down. I mean, the stats bear that out. 58 yards rushing in the first half, 124 in the second. And when you, again, 3 plays, 4 plays, 3 plays, 3 plays, 1 play before the final drive for FSU's offense, your defense is going to get worn out.
Especially when we're into our depth the way we are. It's not like we're rotating guys in, right? Same guys are playing all those plays. So. Oh
yeah, we saw him move Briggs down into the middle of the defense because had to get somebody in there for. I think Ray went out, Cooper went out. I don't know. I don't think Cooper ever came back. I know Malcolm did, but Kurt. Listen, you got a beaten and battered up defense in a lot of areas. How do you bounce back from that coming off a loss heading into a big game? I mean, I don't know if you found yourself in those situations. I mean, you guys had physical games and had to learn how to come back from them. But how do you bounce back from that?
Yeah, this is 2 tough losses in a row, Pat. No doubt about it. We were kind of touching on it earlier. These sting for sure. We were in position really, last week to win, and of course, we should have won last night. Unfortunately. These are going to be tough to bounce back from, but you have to just use this as a motivating factor. Kind of like Bob and Ari were saying, we have to look at the positives, obviously, that we did have last night. And there were a lot of positives. Unfortunately, there were a lot of negatives as well. But I think we just have to try to focus on some of those positives, make adjustments, and just try to improve this week and get ready for a huge game.
Without a doubt. Pat, from the press box, the Noles finally got off the field on 3rd down. I mean, I think they were 2 of 13, and the 4th down, they make a nice read as well defensively and force Larry to have to kind of do the Tebow jump pass, so to speak. And how big was that for them to finally be able to get off the field, especially the way the Wake Forest game went in that regard?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it was huge for their confidence. NC State was 0 for 6 on third down in the first half. Obviously, I think they held them to, 93 yards, something crazy like that in the first half. So they were playing lights out. There's no doubt about that. NC State had no success in the first half, had no success really throwing the ball the entire game. And to the point that we were talking about earlier, I thought, and that's probably not politically correct to say, but I thought the play of the game was when Farmer hit the quarterback and put him out of the game. I mean, I know that it's 2022 and you're not allowed to say those kind of things, but that used to be commonplace when the three of us were playing. I mean, that's what you were supposed to do, right? It's a physical game. And so I thought at that point, I was like, all right, well, listen, they need a drive or two on offense. They've got the quarterback out of the game. NC State had not run the ball very well. And again, they just kept at it. But it was almost like there was a full moon in Raleigh on Saturday night. I mean, it was the tale of two halves. It was one of the stranger games I can remember seeing. And I know that Bob had said before we went to Raleigh that it's just a bizarre place for FSU to go play. And but anyway, listen, I thought the defense got after him really well. I mean, everything, they pressured Leary. He could not throw the ball. He was very uncomfortable. I don't think Thayer Thomas had a catch in the game. If you had told me that Thayer Thomas was going to be held, he had caught 20% of their passes to date, and was by far their leading receiver. If you told me he was going to be held catchless and Leary was going to be out of the game, I would have thought for sure Florida State was going to come home with a win.
That's right. The one catch he had was ruled on review not a catch, right? That was him. That's crazy.
Yeah. So listen, they targeted a tight end. 47 was targeted twice. I don't think they threw the ball, and he had one target all year. I mean, they had NC State's offense all kind of discombobulated. I mean, listen, they did an excellent job on defense, and you got to hope that performance really does carry over to next week, right? Because you got a big challenge. So you got to find a way, as every coaching staff does, to build off both the positive and negatives. And Adam Fuller and his staff have some very positive things to build off of going into next week.
They do. And Kirk, former defensive player yourself, linebacker, what is the key to getting off on the money down, so to speak? Is it mentality? Is it execution? Back in your days, I mean, what were the keys again to getting off the field?
I think there's no doubt about it, and that this was installed in us with Coach Andrews, Coach Burnham, Amato, Gladden. It's a mindset. It's mentality. I mean, this is mano a mano against your man. It comes down to a pride factor. We're going to hold you on third down. You know how crucial and how important these downs are. It's time to dig in and come to play. So I think it's about 90% mindset, 10% execution.
Yeah. All right. Well, fellas, by the way, Pat, if you guys haven't seen the Grady Jarrett on Tom Brady hit today that they also called roughing the passer, I would spare yourself because it's going to upset you with where the direction of football is going.
Yes,
Twitter was in a Twitter's in an upbeat.
Cannell posted a picture of it. Danny Cannell, who's a former quarterback, and I both agree it was a BS call. You cannot take the football out of football. All right, so the play I heard this comment in the press box. The play the reverse got blocked by the running back, got kind of tattooed with the running back coming at him. I was told that play was too violent.
It was what? Too violent?
Too violent. Anyway,
let's just put skirts on everybody.
Yeah, right.
Yes. Football's football, man. That's mine. Very few people play it.
That's right.
But anyway, yes, I did see that, Ariya, and yes, it did upset me, but I've gotten over it.
Cool. Well, all right, guys. So let's just segment. We've got about 10 minutes probably left here on this show. I figure we do 5 minutes of fan questions. We do have some rolling in for you guys as the analysts on the show, and then we'll spend 5 minutes talking about Clemson and what the opportunity presents FSU next weekend in Tallahassee. Bob, I feel like I haven't heard from you in a minute. I want to bring you back onto here and kind of start going through some fan questions. So it feels like this one from Warpath Noles is a pretty good one.
Yeah, the last 2 weeks, I think, guys, I'll ask you this one. The last 2 weeks have looked like the 2021 team regarding the penalties and the turnovers, a little bit of regression there. NC State has a good defense. Wake didn't, but the offense played one half in each of the last two games. Why do you think this is? Why are we seeing a level of inconsistency? And maybe if I can tack on the question, are we seeing in-game adjustments from coaches and maybe the execution isn't there, or is it just really tough to tell?
Yeah, for me, I think number one, the teams we're playing are better. And I've seen adjustments being made, but I don't know the answer to that. I think when I look at where the offense, especially the offensive line, how they go during the week and from week to week, so I see some guys get better, some guys regress, some guys get better, some guys regress. I just don't get this because of the injury situation, because we're plugging guys in and out a bunch. That continuity just is not there, and I think that has something to do with it. When Rob Scott got in the game, he played last. He was a difference last night for sure. And then I saw where Darius played a little bit of right guard. I don't know if Dylan Manuel was hurt, but so we're plugging guys back and forth. I think that might have a little something to do with the inconsistency we're seeing. And by the way, we're playing better teams too.
Yeah. I think, Mark, you've hit the nail on the head. I really think that this is the $1 million question. And as we all know, football is the greatest sport in the world. And, you ride these waves of momentum, and you ride, a real good series. And then the next series, you're not. And it's interesting to see why things do happen, why things progress, and why you can keep that level of play up consistently through 4 quarters. And sometimes you can't. But I think once we kind of get a better pulse on that, obviously, and get some of that figured out, we're going to start to win these games. And I think coming into this Clemson game, like you kind of touched on, Pat, this was the 3 weeks that we knew were going to determine the season for us. Unfortunately, these first 2 didn't result in how we wanted to, but we should have won both those games. I hate to keep on saying that, but we really should have. But now, we've got the opportunity to go against Clemson and, take 1 out of 3, which we'll take, and we'll be happy to do.
I'll tell you another thing too, on the same point, why the inconsistency. If I were to ask you, Bob, or anybody, what do we do best on offense? Is there something that we do that you say that's FSU, right? And so what is our staple? What is the thing that we do consistently that's our deal? I think sometimes we have such an inventory of plays and different things that I think we're just not the best at any one thing. I think we're pretty good at a lot of things, but we're just not the best at any one thing. When I coached, by gosh, we were going to run the inside and outside zone. Everybody was going to know exactly what to do. And that was our deal. That was something we were going to do. When we were at FSU, it was going to be the sprint draw on the toss sweep. And that's what we were going to do. We were going to do that better than anybody. And we could always rely on those moments when it gets really tough, when we knew we had to go down the field, or we had to hold on to the ball, or we had to do whatever. For the passing game, it was, we're going to run the 3-step, the outs and the slant flats and all that. We knew we could execute this play against anything at any time, and we were going to do it exactly right. And for us, I don't think we have that in our thing. I think we do a lot of things really good, but nothing that's like just us.
Is it too complex, fellas? Is that what you're kind of hinting at, Mark? Are things too complex for some of the guys right now?
No, I don't saying it's too complex. I'm saying is we maybe we do too much.
Okay. Maybe
we don't do any one thing. You got to have an identity. Is our identity the counters? I know we run that a lot. That might be the closest thing we do. We'll run those counters, whether it be quarterback counter read or it's the halfback counter. That seems to be the one thing we do a lot, but we didn't run it a lot last night. What is that play when you say, okay, we're going to run this when we know we can execute against anything, running or passing? And I don't know what that is for us. I don't think it's too complex. I just don't think we've settled or we decided what we want to be.
Right. And Pat, I'll come to you now with this one, because I actually think it triggered a thought that I had, what Mark just said. I thought, part of who Florida State was getting the running backs involved in the passing game too, and kind of being diverse on offense. We didn't really see many attempts last night, or any. And that's one of the questions we have from Brian SCHO, just so that I don't mispronounce it on the boards. He's asking, why didn't we call any running back screens last night?
Well, I mean, I'll go back to what Mark said. Obviously, they identified something in NC State defense where they thought Trips was going to work. I mean, we saw a couple of what turned out to win. Listen, they had a couple of flare passes out to four, were essentially runs that you could have had a running back in for. I know Bob wanted to see some screens coming into the game. We didn't see a whole lot of that. I thought we would see, like I said, I thought we'd see a little bit more involvement out of the running backs, but I think that had to be basically, how they schemed up this game plan versus that defense. And listen, I would think another part of it, I don't know, those linebackers at NC State are pretty good and they run pretty well. And I don't think they saw quite the mismatch against those linebackers at NC State that they've seen on some of the other teams they play.
Without a doubt. And I think, too, guys, we have to mention Treshaun Ward went down. We are all kind of hoping that that's not a serious injury because he was in a sling when he came back out. And obviously we're going to have to get an update on that either Monday at the press conference. But he was having a really nice game. I think he was the perfect type of running back, too, against a 3-3-5, the way that NC State runs it. He was having some success, but that might have been part of it, too.
They ran one slip screen. I remember they ran one.
Yeah, they did.
And it was just okay,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, screen is all about timing. And now you got to go back also. Again, we have a lot of inventory of plays. Did we practice it a lot? So a lot of times when you're calling plays, I remember a million times, hey, did we practice this week? And if you didn't practice it, you didn't run it. And if they may not have been a big part of the plan going in, and you can't just start calling stuff out of the air. You have a limited time of practice. You have a limited time of plays that you can practice against certain looks. And if it's not in the plan, it's not in the plan.
Yeah. And that's going to be something they hope to do against Clemson. Guys, let's talk about the Tigers. Bob, we'll start with you. How does Florida State move on from this? I know we're talking about moving on 2 weeks in a row, but this stretch doesn't get easier. And this is going to be the biggest test. If the last two were quizzes, I mean, this is the exam, right? And this is the exam right now against Clemson. You do get them at home, 7:30 at Doak. That should be a lot of fun. What are you looking for Florida State as they move into Clemson week?
I think you have the emotion of the crowd that's going to help you. You've got the home game atmosphere. I think what you see in Clemson is an improving team from last year. Their quarterback, DJ Uyunglele.
Nice.
I'm never going to pronounce that right.
DJU works.
DJU works.
Yeah.
He has slimmed down. He has lost 30 pounds, a little bit more mobile. We've seen some better accuracy out of him. I think it's a good supporting cast around him. Will Shipley, the running back, a big bruising body. So, they've always got receivers, for example, too. And of course, that defensive front, the D-line, the linebackers. Some questions in the secondary, yes, because we saw what Wake Forest did against them. But does this feel like one of the best teams or the best team Florida State's playing? I think so. It's much better to have the situation come at you at home. I think you are now maybe more prepared for Clemson, too, because of not just who you faced in Wake and NC State, but you faced adversity, you faced losses. And so now you're probably a little bit better prepared and of a humble mindset, maybe to go to practice and to work.
Yeah. Mark, throwing it to you now. Clemson's a pretty good team, but a big opportunity for Florida State Saturday night.
It is a tremendous opportunity. And I think Clemson's a little more vulnerable than they have been in the past. I think now their defensive line is elite, and that's going to be its own separate challenge, but they are vulnerable in the back on defense. And I think offensive line-wise, I think they might be a little bit vulnerable. So they're not the juggernaut they've been the past couple of years. I don't know that they've necessarily earned their ranking. Top 5 team. I don't know if they're that. They're definitely top 10, I would say. But, I'll say this. This is 3 weeks in a row where we've really had to bring it. And, for whatever reason, Wake, we weren't up for it. I thought we were up for it early this game. Can we get up for it for 60 minutes? Because that's what it's going to take. It's going to take a 60-minute effort of winning football. Going back to my initial comment to start the show, penalties, missed assignments, missed tackles, turnovers, all that stuff. Got to clean that up because it's going to have to be that kind of game for us to have a chance to win the game.
Kirk, defensively, Florida State, can they build on the performance against NC State and give them a shot Saturday night in Doak?
Absolutely. They played excellent football in that first half. I think they have to build off that. They have to look at the positives from that first half and really know that they are a good defensive team now. We have to carry that in now into this, this coming week, of course. But I think, coming off these 2 losses, unfortunately, I just want these guys to know and maintain the confidence that they are a good team. We've got some really good football minds on here. And, I think, we're confident with this team. The fans are behind them. We know they can win. And I just hope that they can maintain that level of mentality where they're going to bring confidence in this week, bring a little swag and take the positives from these past 2 games. And let's work off it. And let's come in here ready to play. This is a perfect opportunity. I agree with Mark. This is a good Clemson football team. I don't think it's the Clemson of past. So I think it's a perfect opportunity for us to come in and really shock Clemson and shock the nation on Saturday night.
Pat Burnham, you'll be in the box Saturday night. Should be a lot of fun. Where does Florida State have the opportunity when you looked at, because you've watched some Clemson this season, where can FSU have success against the Tigers?
Well, first of all, I need DJ's dietitian's number. Okay, so if we can get set up to where I can get an interview with him, so I can grab those digits, so I can get on his diet
ask
plan.
Kirk, man. He looks jacked. Just ask Kirk for his tips. You don't need DJU. We've got it right. Mark Salva's like, excuse me,
I'll help
I'm
you
a
out,
model
man.
over here too.
I'm right here.
So,
Right.
let's start there. But listen, I agree with everything everyone has said about this. First of all, what Kirk just said, that we've seen resolve from this football team. It's the one thing we talk about, culture and the change in the culture. We've seen this fact that, and Mike Norvell said it in his press conference. He expects this team to respond, right? I think the key, as you've alluded to, Ari, is exactly where is this team from a health standpoint. I think that you got to worry about the running game first against Clemson. I agree. I still don't. They struggled against Boston College. We talk about all the time. There is no transitive property in college football. Alabama was a 24-point favorite against Texas A&M and got lucky to get out of that ball game. We see it every week. If Florida State wins this ball game, would I be surprised? Not at all. I expect them to respond. This has been their character since the season started. They come back from adversity. This is not the same Clemson teams we've seen the last 4 or 5 years. It's more similar to last year's team than any team we've seen in the recent past. And this team that Florida State is not like the teams of the recent past. So it's a night game, great environment. You've got a quarterback that outside of last night has been playing very well. You would like to have Trayshawn Ward back, as you've seen. But listen, I think that they've got to find some sustainable offense. I think they got to continue to play good against be very active and physical on defense as they were against NC State. But you got to keep those things going. But no, listen, I said it on First Impressions after the game last night. Every game that FSU has on its schedule is winnable. And to Kirk's point, I'm sorry. 2 ranked teams, you're within a possession of winning them. Probably should have won both. Could have won. We shouldn't say should. Let's say could have easily been 6-0. You're not. You're 4-2. But Clemson is not an unbeatable team. I want to see this team come back with the spirit that we've seen them play with earlier. In the first 5 games of this season.
I love it, boys. Yeah, good stuff from you guys. And Pat, just agree with you. I think this is a Florida State team that's going to be hungry on Saturday night, and you got to hope the probabilities, right? We wanted 1 of the 3 if we could get it. 2 would have been nice. You still got another shot against these Tigers to kind of make that statement. And oh boy, 5-2 would look really good, wouldn't it, on that schedule as you move forward? So good stuff from you guys. Kirk Carruthers, you are the man. Appreciate you. Mark Salva, your insights always appreciated. And Pat, thank you for battling the elements to hop off that flight and make it back to Tallahassee. You're in one piece. We're happy to see it, and look forward to seeing you soon here as we continue our coverage with the Osceola. All right. Well, Bob, just you and I now as we try and sign off and say goodbye here on Osceola. What can we look forward to from our site as we move into Clemson week?
Yeah, I think it's a good time. 6 games in, 6 games to go. Let's do a little bit of midseason report. Where are these guys better? Where there still need to see some improvement? I think some of the good questions we've had on the message board is, Spearhead 04 asked us, is Florida State on track? Is Florida State falling short? I thought about it for a couple of minutes and I said, yes and yes. On track, yes. Better than last year's 5 and 7. Falling short, yes. Probably should be beating a team like NC State when you're up 17 to 3 with a backup quarterback in. So it's not just, these aren't easy questions. These are kind of nuanced answers. And I think we're going to kind of attack where do things stand, offense, defense, special teams, a little bit of good and bad, I think, from everything. So it's a good time to maybe take stock of where Florida State is.
Make sure you check out Pat's impressions on our site. Kurt, great column, I should say, from him. And Monday afternoon, lunchtime-ish, we'll have Mike Norvell and the coordinators as well to give us updates as the Noles move into Clemson week. Again, thanks to Kirk Carruthers, Mark Salva, Pat Burnham. For Bob Ferranti, I'm Ariya Massoudi. This has been Seminole Sidelines, and we appreciate you guys for watching. And feel free to take a listen to this on replay on your favorite podcast streaming site. Thanks again, guys. Take care.